Hey, part 2 of explaining to you McKinley's presidency so that you can understand why Trump is like such a fanboy. Part of this economic approach is insisting upon the gold standard. We'd already kind of established our money on the gold standard earlier, but there was this movement. There had been an economic panic in 1893. There was a movement among especially populist farmers and miners out west wanting to free silver, basically wanting to add silver as another part of our currency so that we could have basically more money in the bank. It might lead to inflation, but it might also like help the plight of some of these people out west who were really struggling. McKinley in the election was running against William Jennings Bryan, who was like the poster boy for the free silver movement. He comes up all the way. He's like the Forrest Gump of this era in American history. And a lot of big business interests were really worried about William Jennings Bryan. They saw him as like kind of a radical when it came to economic policy. So McKinley, his campaign is one of the first where we saw a lot of fundraising and donations in favor of a presidential candidate. Eventually, they appealed to bankers and business interests who gave them $3.5 million for speakers and produced over 200 million pamphlets advocating for McKinley's election and the Republican position. Meanwhile, William Jennings Bryan is really doing kind of a grassroots campaign. McKinley wins. The last thing McKinley's presidency is known for is imperialism. He would much prefer to practice economic imperialism by bringing other places into the economic sphere, but if he's pushed, he's gonna go in and take you. His presidency saw the outbreak of the Spanish-American War, in which then he gained control over Puerto Rico and Guam, and then controversially the Philippines. That was a big debate, is should the Philippines become independent? At that point, we were already looking over at Asia and realizing how valuable having different military bases in the Pacific would be, so we kept the Philippines. Also in 1898, we end up annexing Hawaii. That's more specifically because of McKinley's moves. So essentially white sugar planters and just white planters had been moving to the independent kingdom of Hawaii for decades. What McKinley does is he recognizes that right now a lot of those sugar planters and other places are outside of our sphere of economic influence. What he does is he raises tariffs so that those planters go, oh my gosh, we want to get inside the American sphere. So they overthrow the king and then eventually the queen of Hawaii, and then they push for annexation against the wishes of the indigenous people. He helps negotiate what's known as the open door policy in China, which basically says, hey, no one's going to claim and call dibs on China. We're each going to basically get different parts of the coast, and we're each going to have the opportunity to trade. He kind of wanted to avoid like a world war over China. And honestly, most European powers were okay with it because no one really wanted to like directly govern China. And finally, he's the one that began negotiations with the British for some reason to start building the Panama Canal. He gets assassinated. Teddy Roosevelt takes over that project.